Welcome to the Family Pictures Podcast. I'm Michael Branson Smith, and I'm here with
Jim Groom.
And we are back with hot summer 70s family horror. This is part 2 of a 5-part series we're doing.
Hot summer and family podcast
Horror! You suck at singing.
Anyway, I do. No, I'm good actually.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Did you ever sing, do chorus or anything like that?
I karaoke.
Oh, you karaoke?
Yeah.
You're like a family karaoke family?
Yeah, I've karaoke'd the Jaws theme before. Gotcha. Anyway.
So that is right. We are doing Jaws, the 1975 sophomore film from Steven Spielberg. Technically his third film because he did a TV movie called Duel before that.
Duel is considered the greatest TV movie. Do you know what was considered the second greatest TV movie?
The cheerleader mom film that we did.
That's how low the bar of great TV movies is. Anyway.
All right. So, yeah, we're back with family horror, and we're still, again, thankfully, face-to-face for only our second podcast.
Oh my God. And I love it.
At York College, I get to stare dreamily at Jim Groom's face without the medium of the internet between us. We can touch one another.
As we awkwardly reach out.
And this is our, thankfully, a film that I actually will have seen in this 5-episode arc that we're starting, because it's about characters, not just about the big ideas of horror, which I learned in the first film from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre isn't even necessarily the intention of the artists. They're just trying to make some guts and gore and make some money that we touched on at the very end. But it becomes part of the culture. And talk about a film.
I'm glad you're coming at this whole thing open-minded. Yeah. I just want to say that.
I appreciate unlike you in Moonstruck, which we will someday talk about. We will have the unreleased tape.
We will have the unreleased tape. Jim Groom's a total ass.
Yeah. And this is also a cultural phenomenon. I think Jaws, probably beyond, it's like Psycho, Jaws, Star Wars, these few films that kind of overtake the culture and live on through memes, and they're informing us about what it means now. But it was based on a book by Peter Benchley. So this man writes a book. He's inspired by watching some documentary of sharks in 1971 by this couple, the Taylors, that live out in Australia, and they go down underwater in the Great Barrier Reef, and they're the first photographers of sharks. And sharks were never monsters until we got to finally see them in their natural habitat. And they're freaking huge, and they have big, crazy-ass teeth, and they do shit like jumping out of the water, breaching a seal and saying, "That's mine." And
Shark Week.
Yeah, which has turned into its own genre of itself, Shark Week, right?
Absolutely.
And megalith sharks and all that kind of crazy stuff we have now. Or
few films have had the impact that Jaws has. Yeah. I think you are absolutely right. Yeah. This film is epic in every sense of that word.
Yeah, and the production was epic and almost broke Steven Spielberg before it even got started, but it ends up making Steven Spielberg instead, and he comes through on the other side of it. And it's a book that basically is a page turner, right? It's a classic page turner, and it's about a shark that terrorizes a small island community that it's a proxy for Martha's Vineyard, but it could be Montauk, it could be I think the Long Island, for me, we should talk about that first. It's like we both have I have my brief beach community. I used to my mom used to drive us down to North Carolina, and we would go to Ocracoke Island. And it was this little containerized world, right? These people that grew up on an island, probably fishing community for the most part, but fishing dies and tourism takes over.
Yeah.
And that was something, I was the tourist at this time. And, Ocracoke Island is part of that Nag's Head, set of beaches where Kitty Hawk is. The Wright brothers first flew the plane and everything like that. And there's these interesting tensions that exist as a result of that, right? And so this is the first kind of family moment. We're going to talk about the production and stuff like that. But I think it's good to get out of the way and talk about the idea of community being this kind of enclosed family that looks out for one another first.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's interesting too. I mean, as we look at the film, but how many, I grew up on Long Island. I grew up on the water, essentially. And I feel like this film I felt like everybody who came out of it, and you talk about a little of this in the production notes, they were from the island.
Yeah.
The people they used were actually like real people who grew up on Martha's Vineyard, and this whole idea of islander in and out.
Yep.
And I felt like very much like, this was a world I knew and I was part of. Now, I wasn't an islander in the same way because Long Island's too big. It's not a small island the same way. But I felt very much like that shark was there waiting for me after I saw this. Like everyone I think who I grew up with, I wasn't unique in this.
Yeah.
Like, this became a boogeyman.
It really was.
Of everyone. Like the greatest boogeyman.
Right. Because it was so accessible.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you went to the beach, if you've seen Jaws, and then never mind going to the beach, kids would be scared getting in the freaking bathtub.
Any body of water, right? Even if you're in Kansas, I guess there was a pond, you might think, is there a shark in there? Like, are there pond sharks?
Yeah. Piranhas is what they call them.
Aren't they in rivers?
Well, this becomes the modus operandi for monster movies. So this is more of a monster movie, as you already mentioned off camera, like the versus a horror movie, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And like Alien, Jaws in space, and that the idea you pitch a movie that's like Jaws in a pond, piranha.
Yeah,
right.
That's right. I love Piranha.
Yeah.
And I love the whole idea of like, Alien, truly, no one hears you scream in space. Like that whole idea of like, and Alien's great because it's both horror and monster and sci-fi.
Right.
But back to Jaws. Yeah, I think Jaws was just, for me, it hit really hard because every summer we spent the summer at the beach.
Yeah.
And so every summer whenever I saw this movie, which probably was in 76 or 77, you never looked at the water the same way again.
And even to this day, like, I mean, I go to the beach, I out at the end of Long Island now because my wife's family grew up out there. And so I get to luckily spend a lot of time at the beach. And to this day, when you go out and boogie board and you're hanging out in the waves, waiting for the next one to come, your mind invariably goes back to Jaws.
And like, no shots underwater with the legs.
Yeah. And you're like,
flipping.
There's stuff alive below your feet.
And it could be a 25-foot.
25 foot. Yep.
25
they decided on 25.
White. Oh my God. The greatest monster. I mean, I think there are a lot of people, but I'm one of them. Like my complete obsession with sharks, which I have, started here. You know, like with Jaws.
And it's cool because my obsession with sharks went towards Save the Shark because sharks became abused out of this film, which is really funny. Yeah. It's sad. One of the sad artifacts of Jaws is shark hunting kind of escalated for a period of time. And then there's also the to this day, the harvesting of shark fins and throwing sharks back. And sharks are now oddly an endangered species of certain different sharks breeds. I don't know which ones, but whatever. And the idea of the shark being this thing that we lived with whenever we were in the water, because we were both too young to see this when it was live. And I can't remember how I first saw this film. I do remember it lasted forever. And this leads to also something that's very different from now. Movies are in and out of theaters in less than 2-3 weeks. Back then, even though this is quote unquote the first blockbuster, this is the first film that was released on hundreds of screens. And that was a risk because they thought that's what you do with a trashy movie that you don't think is going to do well. But in reality, that's how they do all movies.
Exactly. It changed the market.
Yeah. But it also still had the long tail, no pun intended, because films back then, if it was popular, would go for months. And so Jaws was the classic first repeat watch film. It was like, there's interviews from the documentaries of this film and things like that where people are always like, oh, I've seen it 5 times. Oh, I've seen it 6 times, which Star Wars overtook too. And so what's so great is the way it felt down in the system back then, moviegoers, is you had your premiere theaters, right? And that's where you'd have the super big screens, but then it would filter down into what I literally were known at in my community as the 99-cent theaters. So Jaws would be playing for 2 more years occasionally. They would say, oh, let's put Jaws back up in the it's summer.
Exactly. Yeah. For the summer, they would put, and I had a very similar experience. I had a theater up the block from me. And it wasn't a 99-cent theater proper.
Yeah.
It was a theater that tried to do it, but it couldn't compete because everything was going multi-screen.
Yeah.
So what
The
it would do
multiplexes
is on
took
the
over.
summer, it would be 75 cents and Jaws would play for 3 months. And you would go there and see it 10 times. Right? Like you would just go and watch Jaws because it was 75 cents and your parents would be like, get out of the house. And you would go.
And you weren't supposed to go either. That was the thing. Like I remember being told, don't watch this movie as a little
Jaws
kid.
is too scary.
And I was a kid who was a swimmer too. I swam on a swim team from age 8 to 18. I loved swimming. And I remember being like 10 or around then. It was probably even 7 or 8. I don't know when I saw this, but I remember.
I think I'm 7 or 8 when I saw this. I think that's
nuts.
right. Which would make it 78.
Right.
That's about right.
And this is one of those films where they figured out how to, and we're going to get into the production of how Spielberg he had done this TV movie called Duel
TV movie.
which is about a Goliath 18-wheeler chasing a man, down the highways. And they wanted him to do it all with, visual effects. Like they do back screening through windows and kind of like Hitchcock style cinema. And he's like, no, it's got to be authentic. And so he shot all out on the road and shot this thing naturally. And he wants to do this too for Jaws, which he pulls off, but which is really, really catastrophic in terms of what it did to the production and how many problems that brought up. But ultimately, because it's so naturalistic and the shark seems so real.
God, it does.
To this day, it seems so real. Like in the documentaries, it's so great. They have like actual oceanographers and shark scientists, whatever the hell that is, right? Talking about how like there's a lot of authenticity of the movement of the shark and what it's doing, even though it's very mechanical in retrospect, but it's still fine. But because it's practical, it's not this big CGI impossibility thing. It felt so real and it was so terrifying. And I can't even imagine my 8-year-old self in watching this film.
It's like Sharks in the Seine now. Like it's such a different, just the way sharks blew up. But I want to ask you, because we're getting there, but before we get there, what is the scene, out of curiosity, in Jaws, the first time you watched it, that you most remember scaring the hell out of you? What is it?
It's probably the death of Quint ultimately.
Yeah.
Because it's the gore factor and it's so real. Like I know often for you, is it the Ben Gardner's face popping out?
Absolutely.
Yeah. See that stuff.
That's the one.
Yeah, I get it. And
he gets the tooth and then he's fine and he's sitting there and then Ben Gardner's face. Yeah. And watching it now, it's not scary at all.
No, and because that's a classic horror thing. And I was never, like I said, we've mentioned I'm a horror neophyte for the most part. But Jaws is a mainstream film, so of course I'd seen it and love it to this day. But to me, it was the real death.
Yeah,
because Quint's dying is practically documentarian, and it's terrifying.
Yeah, it is.
Whereas Ben Gardner, he's just a dead head floating in the body. And it was actually filmed afterwards, too, which is interesting. And to kind of talk about the production a little bit, there's so many wonderful things about... Let's first briefly talk about the script itself. So Peter Benchley gets his first crack. It's his book that's a bestseller. It gets optioned. And then Spielberg gets chosen because he happens to see it in a galley of the unpublished book at the studio where he's completing his first film, which I forget the name of. And he says, like, I'll do this, right? And so Benchley gets the first shot at the script, and there's 3 versions, and then he hires Carl Gottlieb, who was a TV writer for The Odd Couple, to punch it up because he knows the characters aren't pretty well developed, and he wants to bring some humor to it, though Carl Gottlieb, other than the structure of the film, Carl Gottlieb eventually ends up rewriting the entire script. And it's written while they're making the production, and which is so cool. It's like this is one of those...
It's like John Hughes, right?
It's kind of like John Hughes, but it's more like Apocalypse Now, where they all decamp. It's all these non-Hollywood people or Hollywood people taking over an area, right? And this is what we're doing. we're going to be in Martha's Vineyard. So they're literally on an island, so they can't like go to Boston every day. There's no city to escape to, the actors. So they're kind of like stuck together. And so they had meals together all the time. And because there were so many delays in the production, primarily due to being shooting on the ocean and not being prepared in the Shark, which was affectionately known as Bruce by the props people.
Who was Spielberg's lawyer? Is that right?
Yeah,
Bruce Ratner or something?
Raymer or something like
Raymer.
that. Yeah, they named him after his lawyer. He's a shark, an attorney. Ha ha.
I like that.
Yeah, no, I do too. And so they would just kind of go over how the film was going every night. So you have like basically, Robert Shaw, who plays Quint, who's the grizzled shark hunter.
Amazing.
And who's also a playwright.
I have a good little bit of information I found out about this. Do you know who was originally given the role of Quint, who they wanted to play?
Yeah, there was like lots of different almost.
One of the ones who they did is Lee Marvin.
Lee Marvin, right.
And Lee Marvin said, I can't do that. With that, he looked at the shark. He's like, with that toy shark, none of my hunter friends will respect me.
He's too masculine.
Exactly. He was like, because he was a real hunter. He used to hunt in the Everglades and like come out with a boa constrictor or whatever around his neck or whatever crocodile. But like he laughed at the shark. He's like,
And Robert Shaw didn't want to do it, but his wife said, do it. Basically, because she was hearing that this is really popular, and it's like, don't be an idiot. This is a good opportunity good for him.
It was.
And but Robert Shaw was also a playwright, and then you have Roy Scheider and Richard Dreyfuss, two younger. Like Richard Dreyfuss is the youngest actor in the troupe, and he had just been successful in another film, and it was Shaw and Dreyfuss that improvised a lot during these meals, and then they would incorporate that dialogue. Gottlieb would write it, rewrite it, and incorporate it in, and they would basically be writing pages the night before each shoot.
It's awesome.
Which is amazing.
Now, did you say, am I right, that Dreyfuss and Shaw hated each other?
It's so great because Shaw's son, so Robert Shaw was an inveterate alcoholic. He was old school Hollywood, like, you drink before breakfast, terrible, terrible drunk, and is from what I understand. And his son ended up, making a play that's, it was in London, and I think it's still going on, about Shaw's and Dreyfuss's relationship on set.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be really good. I've never. It's not in television, so it's an actual play. So it's hard to get access to that actual content. And yeah, it was an infamous sparring. And I think they've tried to lighten the discord between them. But if you watch interviews with Dreyfuss just after Jaws, he just is brutal. He just like. He's like, this is the worst choice I ever made in my life. I mean, Dreyfuss was notoriously difficult to work with, I heard, in subsequent films and stuff like that. He was your classic, I think, method actor who was just like really into his own head to get his performance out of himself, which, I mean, whatever it takes, it's really, really, really hard.
Sure.
Whereas Shaw was old school, like, he's from the greatest generation, his version of like what's hard is very, very, very different.
Sure.
And that plays out in their characters, right? Because Dreyfuss is he's the Nepo baby, right? He's like
it's true. He comes there with the rich boat, like my parents. Whose money? Mine? My personal wealth, or the whole family?
But they were both intensely creative and competitive, so they were constantly going at one another. And I think that's why Dreyfuss endured, even though despite his descriptions of hating it, even as his older self describing it, he can handle it, and he believes he recognizes the value of what came out of it, but. It sounds like he was brutalized by the whole experience. And I would love to see that play. It sounds like a lot of fun. And then finally, we had the idea of Quinn's character, who's so important, is because he also, the idea of him being a survivor of the USS Indianapolis, which is probably the most famous scene. I mean, your adult self, your young self, the most famous stuff are the shark attacks and the scares. But your adult self, it's the conversation, the exchanging of stories about scars and the story of the USS Indianapolis, which we'll get to later, is probably one of the most. But Shaw himself, though, Howard Sackler's, it was his idea, who's a playwright, a Pulitzer Prize winning playwright. wrote an idea, a script, and then John Milius turned it into a pilot, like an 8-minute, 8-page monologue. And Robert Shaw was like, "This is nuts," and he rewrote it himself. And it was his script that ultimately is what's performed.
Which is cool. I didn't know that Milius had a hand in it.
That's crazy. I know. The writer of Apocalypse Now.
Exactly, right?
Freaking
Red
Mania.
Dawn.
Yeah.
Right.
Wolverines!
That's awesome.
And so Spielberg was only 26, and he's like, yeah, I want to do this. It'll be like Duel. And for the most part, it is like Duel for the first half of the film. And as you said, they described like, there's basically 8 Hollywood people in this entire film. The rest is all people from the island or Boston actors for the most part.
Yeah.
And that's this thing I've talked about previously in other films. It's like I miss so dearly these films that immerse in a real world.
Yeah.
And we've already talked about our connection to like these kind of beach cultures. And the tension that exists in the film and the community that exists in the film is real.
Absolutely. One of the greatest scenes in this film, and obviously in retrospect, is the moment when the boat lands and all of these people and all of their station wagons and all of their stuff start streaming out. And it's like you get a picture, like an archival picture, like it's the beginning of film, and these people are walking by and you see like, this is what people in the 70s looked like.
Yeah.
This is how they lived. This is how they experienced the beach. It really, like, at that point, you're right. That kind of experience in a film like this brings the 70s and so many of my own memories of going to the beach and living to life. And very few films do it as well as Jaws. And I think not realizing like that's a choice he made to really embed it in Martha's Vineyard. And yeah, it pays dividends because that's like almost part documentary, if
Absolutely.
you will.
And that's the thing about these films that do these kind of things is like, they're embedded in a community, as I've already described, and they're kind of stuck there as actors, as well as producers and filmmakers. And it's Carl Gottlieb, the writer, who's doing the pages. It's like he's like, thank God I didn't have to go to set, because every time they came back, they were like sunburnt and salt encrusted, and like he's like, it's like, what's going on out there?
Exactly.
Because the filming that happens in the community, in like Martha's Vineyard proper, the houses and the beach and all that, that's traditional. It's fine, and it was incredibly successful. And all these families that we're introduced to, and the idea of being an islander, which comes from the people there themselves.
Yeah, they talk about it.
Yeah. And, or the town hall scene where they're crowding in, worried that their livelihood, because they live off the summer. We should just say, like, that's the thing about these communities. It's like they have this relationship with tourists that is complicated. They make their livelihood off there. So all the people that are fixing wealthy people's houses or providing tours or owning restaurants or small businesses of all sorts, they live off of these tourists. But there's the entitlement. That doesn't really come into this film, but it exists.
It exists,
because it exists in the background of the community's description of their value system, which is this tension that we learn is that there's been a shark attack. No, it's not a shark attack. It's actually it's probably a boating accident.
Yeah. When you say barracuda, people say, what? Huh? You say shark. You got a panic on your hands on the 4th of July. It's the greatest line of any movie.
And, Mayor Vaughn, who's the person who's basically trying to protect the commercial interests of the town, I used to think of him as the classic trope of the obstructionist bureaucrat.
Yeah.
Right? He's getting in the way of the heroes trying to go after the shark. But now I actually see him as the real villain.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. Right. Because the shark's not a villain. The shark's just a freaking shark. It's like, these people, they're here, I'm eating them.
It's right. The whole territoriality.
Yeah.
It's just a theory, but I tend to believe it, or I personally believe it. But yeah, I mean, Vaughn is a great character.
Yeah.
I mean, but the point too that you're making is here you have a kind of embedded situation of a community that has to make choices, and choices about the preservation of itself, but also the people in it.
Yeah.
And that's why this film, that's a monster movie, becomes a really powerful allegory. And it was kind of striking for me when we talked about this off camera, but just when the first time someone said to me with Godzilla, like, oh, that's actually a movie about Hiroshima and, nuclear war and, Japan dealing with the aftermath. What does Jaws represent, right? Like, what does this giant shark who kind of invades this community and affects the lives of everybody in it start to represent? Which for me was the kind of graduation of like, what does it mean to read films beyond like, that was an awesome scene when he ate Robert Shaw, or when his head fell out of the boat.
Or just the opening scene, which is like you never even see the shark.
This film, when you watch it, it's like scene after scene after scene. You can make argues for in terms of the art of making it. It's just gorgeous. Yeah. And then there's that larger question that great films like this always kind of inhabit is, well, what is he trying to say? Or what does it say about the 70s? Or what does it say about family, which is what we're interested in? Yeah. And that's an interesting question. Like for me.
There's a really fun aside in this context of, in doing my research, the writer Benchley was like not reading reviews, but one came to him through another writer who is a journalist who is, of all things, someone who covered Cuba, and he interviews Fidel Castro, and he said he happens to ask him, "So what are you reading?" And he's reading the Spanish for it was like I wrote it down, Tiburon, and he's reading. He's like, "Why are you reading such commercial trash, right? Hollywood trash?" He's like, "Oh no. This is not a piece of commercial trash. This is an allegory of capitalism eating society, right? Because they value commercial over the personal, the people, protecting the people. And so it's so funny to think of it that way.
Well, and that's a beautiful way to encapsulate the first, let's say, 40 minutes of this film.
Yeah.
Right?
It's kind of 50-50. It's a split movie. It turns into the adventure hunt about midway.
And we have our hero, who I love, Roy Scheider, who was in, the famous one with Popeye. I'm forgetting it. It's got the French Connection.
Oh yeah,
and that him and Gene Hackman and that are amazing. And he's one of the great '70s actors. But this is the role he'll always be remembered for.
Absolutely.
And he plays the chief who comes to this small island because he's a New York City Police Department officer who wants a change.
Right.
And that's kind of how we start to frame this movie. Like, that's how we start this idea of family.
And we should get into him and it's also funny because Roy Scheider actually retires as an actor into this life.
Absolutely. I saw him in the East Hampton King Cullen.
Yeah.
Or Bridgehampton King Cullen. One of them, I saw him. He was tanned.
Yeah.
He looked like he did as Brody. I was like, it's Brody.
Yeah. He's retired. No longer a police officer.
He's just really moved into his Amity Island, which is Montauk now or whatever.
Yeah, which is really funny to think about. But yeah, we are introduced. So one of the things that's interesting and is important is like Brody is this transition of the atypical hero, right? We have the brooding. So the 50s archetypes, they're just iconic, strong men, right? The 50s in early Hollywood. And the 60s, the new wave brought the kind of anti-hero, right? With Bonnie and Clyde being kind of the originator of that, and many, many others. If you think of I always love MASH and the surgeons that are, anti-war, the anti-war film about people that are supporting the war.
Yeah.
Right.
Big Man, Little Man, like a lot of those kind of like
Midnight Cowboy.
Exactly, yeah.
Right. But this is not that. So this is a big transition. Not only is this the first blockbuster, but this is the first kind of rejection of the anti-hero and the rejection of the kind of navel-gazing 60s and 70s man. The man who's there to like, I'm going to change the world through my personal vendetta or interest in affecting society, like The Graduate is another one, classic example.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
And so Brody's just a family man. he couldn't be more normal than anything, because they're not only we learn that he's moved from New York, but he's introduced in the bedroom. He and his wife just wake up.
Yeah, it's a great moment of family. Like, we've all been that with your special friend or whatever. You're there, you wake up, your life begins, you got the kids outside playing. But I have a hot take.
Okay.
As we come to hot take, get ready. My hot take is the French Connection. French Connection gets at every point you were saying about these anti-heroes, right? Gene Hackman, played by Popeye, he's this badass cop on a vendetta, doing his own thing. And who is his partner? They're in the NYPD. His partner's Roy Scheider.
Yeah.
So maybe Roy Scheider.
Oh, you're making a bridge. You're making a bridge like I did.
Fuck Popeye. Yeah. I'm done with this life.
Yeah.
I got to get out of this.
Yeah.
I'm going to Amity Island.
I know. I want to go home to my wife. I don't want to go to the stupid bar and get drunk and rehash all the crap we've seen all day yet again that my wife's never going to understand.
In-person hot take.
Yeah.
Number one.
I love it. Perfect. Thanks. Yeah. Good one. Good one. Yeah, because that's the thing. It's like, that's the cliche of the New York City cop. I've seen too much. My family will never understand. I have to be with the guys all night. Drinking, ignoring my kids.
Which is how I grew up. Like, that was my dad. Like, my dad went out, drank, never came home, was always at the bar. And it was not like, poor me. But, like, that was the man of the 50s and 60s. And that idea of identity.
Right.
And I think the point you're making, and you were making in the notes, and I really like, is what are we dealing with here is a bit of a shift in that identity.
Exactly.
And maybe that's part of that 70s monster that the shark is representing.
Divorce,
broken family, dad home, which sucks. It was better when he was at the bar.
Endless drinking, right? It's like, what the heck, man? It's like, we're here.
Exactly.
We got interests, right?
No, but it's interesting. I think there is something there, and it does set up this idea of the family movie.
Yeah, and he's this stark contrast to the Quint character, and because, but back to staying with Brody for a moment, because there's other things going on, because even though he's taken his family, and it is still the man taking the family to somewhere else, right? Because they're following for his job. He gets this job as the new police officer, because we learn it's his first summer very quickly. And so he's definitely literally the fish out of water, who doesn't like water, but he's made this decision. It's safer. He's off the streets of New York, and he's with his wife, and they're identifying, where are the kids? That's like his first thought. Yeah. And which is very different. And there's also this wonderful moment later on. And we're going to get to it. It's after the failure of the Kittner boy, and it's the worst moment for him emotionally in the film. And he's sitting at the kitchen table, and his youngest son, Sean, is pantomiming him. And he's like literally got all these classic old dad expressions of like, can't do anything. And the little kid is pantomiming him. Every little mini expression. I'm putting my hands on my face if you're doing the audio only, or the classic, like pushing your hair back, after you're just exhausted by life. And he catches his son looking at him, pantomiming him, and he flips a switch immediately. Is into a good dad. And he gives him the stink eye, and his kid gives him the stink eye back. And that was not the hero. In the 70s. That was not the male hero of the 70s at all.
Male hero was never at the dining room table with his kid.
Yeah.
They were basically like, the family was kind of out there.
Yeah.
Right? You would just assume they were there, or they would talk about them. But here, you're right. You're in the living room. You're in the bedroom.
Yeah.
The family is what he's trying to protect, seemingly. And his relationship to it.
Yeah. And it's the thing that defines him, I think, in his failure with the Kittner boy, which we're going to get to. And so, Spielberg turns this adventure story, which he protects, and he talks about in the writing, in subsequent interviews. And there's so many. There's one that's a 50th anniversary that people can watch if you want to. It's on Hulu, whatever, blah blah blah. And they mix the early documentary with now his even more current self talking about it yet again, and he knows this film made him.
Absolutely.
Because this film becomes the first film to make $100 million, and it goes on to make a $200-300 million, which is like $1 billion in today's money. And he says literally this is what gave him director's cut, and he never had to relinquish it ever. You know,
This is it. Yeah.
yeah. And so
That literally made him.
yeah, isn't that crazy? And
It
he thought it
is.
was going to kill him. And we don't have to go into the weeds of like the shark didn't work. They made 3 of them. So we should talk about this. This is kind of fun.
Yeah.
So there's wonderful, well-known production designer. I have to look him up here. What's his name? Joe Alvis. So he's a production designer that had also worked on 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea with his crew of Robert Matty and Whitey Crumb. These are the guys that built the actual shark. And they had built the tentacles that went flopping in the 1954 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Like, so they're like mechanical geniuses.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, I could do that. But in order to pick the length of the shark, Joe Alves does drawings that are 18 foot long, 26 feet long, and 32 feet long. And he brings them into the studio and puts them up against the wall for Spielberg to pick. It's like, he's like, hey, which shark do you want?
Want to buy a shark?
And so they built 3 of these things. One so they could film it going left to right. Another because on the opposite side of the shark, the mechanicals were exposed. And then the left to right one. And then one that was like basically on a crane. So they could do these like jumps, all the jumps, like the jumping on the boat at the end and everything like that. And they broke constantly because they designed them for freshwater, and the salt water just destroyed the electronics.
Yeah.
And so they were constantly, and so the filming just went on and on and on. Never mind we're just going to film on the ocean and dealing with cameras that are moving and not making the audience seasick and all that kind of stuff. It was so hard. But my favorite thing is that they named the sharks because Spielberg started to name it after his lawyer, Bruce Raymer, and so the shark became affectionately known as Bruce. And so for the rest of this podcast, when we talk about the shark, it's Bruce.
It's
so
Bruce.
When Bruce attacks or when Bruce does this, they named him Bruce.
Yeah. I don't know how I feel about naming the shark because the shark still needs to be this unnamed horror.
Well, it is an unnamed horror, but to those that were part of the nasty business of actually making the movie, which was really, really, really freaking hard and endless, he was Bruce. And so we have this community that is trying to navigate the complexities of their relationship with the tourists that they built their livelihood on. And my favorite quote that speaks to that is when Quint is introduced, and we should transition a little bit to Quint. Quint is introduced at the town hall meeting, and this is after the Kittner boy has been killed, and we should talk about that too. But I want to just, for a quick aside, just about the community. He says, are you going to stay alive and ante up? Or are you going to play it cheap and be on welfare all winter? And that's the idea. It's like, this is a community that makes all of their money in 2-3 months of the year. And so that's the high stakes of this. And that's how the mayor, who's a villain ultimately, but at the same time, you kind of see why he does it.
That's why he justifies it. And then basically the medical examiner and the journalist go along with the mayor. Right? They're his right and left-hand man.
Yeah. Oh, and the journalist is, by the way, is Carl Gottlieb.
Yeah, that's great. I didn't know that.
Both writers of the film get in the film because Benchley plays the TV reporter.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, the one on the thing is that what has become Death Beach or whatever he says, essentially. That's awesome.
Yeah.
No, so I mean, but I think it's a brilliant setup because I love not only the way in which it starts with the woman running into the water and getting, the opening shot of her getting attacked.
Yeah, and they talked about how they did.
God, the scene is just amazing.
Yeah, and they taught many of the people that were interviewed about it. They just talk about how so this is what we're doing. We're killing someone in the first 3 minutes of this movie, and we don't see what does it.
Yeah.
And so we have Chrissy Watkins played by Susan Backlany. So we have this classic. We should talk about all the shark kills because they're important.
We need to. Yeah, let's do a kill. Yeah. Let's do a kill spree video.
Yeah. And so the first one is this classic thing that I'm sure you experienced, and even I got to experience it older as being part of my wife's community of beachcombers. It's the bonfire at the beach.
Absolutely.
The fact that I was like, wait, they let you do fires on beaches? Open fires? This sounds crazy. And one of the things is they finally, in the community where I go to the beach, it's like, yeah, you need to put those in buckets because when you just bury your fire at the end of the night, the next morning people end up burning their feet.
Yeah, it's still hot.
So anyway, it's all the teenagers getting drunk, right? And so this boy and this girl are spying one another, and they decide, well, let's go swimming. And Chrissy sprints way ahead of him because he's wasted, and she dives into the water.
Yeah, she gets nude. She dives into the water. She goes out for a swim. There's that leg up, that little kind of gymnastic move. That's so amazing.
Oh,
the water
shot,
shimmering.
It's so beautiful.
It's just amazing.
Yeah.
And then that's the first time we see from beneath the shark's point of view.
We also, for the first time, hear the most famous two notes in all of film history, written by John Williams.
Yeah, it is.
Karaoke, maybe, Jim.
Dun-dun. Is that right?
Dun-dun.
Dun-dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
I mean, there is, I don't know, is there more classic music than that? I don't think so.
Yeah, and so we're introduced to the shark's point of view for the second time because we have the opening shot of the fauna,
kind of,
but
when he's
this
in
is
there.
way more important.
That's the title shot,
Yeah, and,
right?
and it's classic like cinema. It's like, oh, exposed naked woman, but the way that they do this, and in the production notes they talk about it, it's like she was basically wearing a harness from her waist down, and they basically tied carabiners on them and had ropes, and they would drag her back and forth.
That's so good.
People in the water.
It looks so compelling, and I was thinking to myself, like, there's the moment where the shark seems to have her and is moving her to the buoy.
Yep.
And you're like, what is doing that? And that's just even that thing of like, A, technically what's doing it, but B, as a kid saying like, oh my God.
And this is
what is beneath there doing that?
Right. And that's the whole idea thank God Bruce didn't work a lot because this forces people as brilliant as Spielberg to do what they do so well, which is deal with what they have. Yeah. And I think the same thing happened, a few years later in Alien, where Ridley Scott couldn't stand showing the alien so much because it was a man in a suit.
Yeah.
And so they would minimize what you saw. Alien was more interested in showing parts of the alien, but here we don't see the shark itself until almost a third of the way into the film.
Yeah.
Right?
When's the first time we see the shark?
With the Kittner.
The Kittner kid. But we don't see it.
No, you don't. No,
it's actually they're in the pond.
It's in the pond,
that's right.
And that's when the instructor.
And so that's midway, if not beyond.
Right, because it's right before the beginning of the adventure story.
When they go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think also to that point, like doing more with less, right? That's a kind of philosophy too. And I think one of my favorite filmmakers, Mario Bava, who's an Italian B-movie filmmaker who I love, he never had a budget.
Right.
And so he would always do more with less. And he was basically an artist who found himself in cinema. And so he would do all these creative effects and make what looks like a multi-million-dollar Hollywood film for like $100,000. Great story is he does a film, Danger Diabolique, which is a 1968, one of the early one of the early superhero films, but Diabolique, if you don't know him, is like an Italian anti-hero. He's like a terrorist, and he's going to steal from the rich to give to the poor, kind of like a Robin Hood terrorist of the 60s. Anyway, Dino De Laurentiis comes to Bob and is like, look, I need you to make this film. I love the stuff you've done. Here's $2 million or whatever to do it, some big number. And Bob is like, what the hell? $2 million. I wouldn't know what to do with it. So anyway, he makes the film. It's a beautiful film. If you haven't seen it, go out and see it. Danger Diabolique, gorgeous. And then he goes back to Dino Laurentiis to say, I made the film and here's 1.8 million back because I couldn't use it.
He should have pocketed it.
He gave the money back because basically, he worked, his mindset was so about making films, that actually, and he gets criticized for it, but actually it's about the aesthetic, right? And with Danger Diabolique, it's perfect because the aesthetic and the way it works is great. But I think more films could benefit from this. But Jaws has become almost the theory, like the example of this.
Right. Yeah.
Like great restraints create great art.
Yeah, and probably my favorite one, which isn't a kill, but it's when they learn that the shark exists and they're going to try to hunt for it. And so there are these two locals, two islanders, these bubs. They take one of them takes his wife's like pot roast, puts a meat hook into it, and turns it into a fish hook. and ties it to a rope, and then they tie the rope to the end of a pier and they toss it in the water. All right. And so the shark shows up, grabs it, and starts running away with it, and it ends up immediately dragging the dock, ripping half the dock. It rips the dock. One of the men goes in the water, and he's on the dock and gets pulled out maybe like 25 yards from the remaining portion of the dock. And so immediately he's at risk. All right. And he's swimming back. And his friend's saying, Charlie, swim. But we
Don't
never
look back, Charlie.
Don't look back,
Charlie.
And the idea is
me.
the way that we know the shark has turned around is the dock turns around.
Yeah. And then the dock stops slowly coming towards him.
Yeah. And the dock's like this piece of wood is this avatar of the shark.
Yeah.
And we still haven't seen the shark at all.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that. And I love the way he did it. And I think you're right. That's one of the most creative moments in the whole film.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful, again, like everything, it's a beautiful shot.
Right.
It's a beautiful scene. But the second kill after Chrissy, who dies terribly, and they find her arm, and that begins the whole thing of it wasn't a shark attack. It was a boating accident.
This was no boating accident.
Yeah.
And the poor shrinking.
Put that cigarette out.
Yeah, that coroner who's like shrinking in the corner at his
exactly.
Acquiescence to the mayor.
So then we get our second kill.
Yeah.
Which is one of the toughest kills. This is when they are afraid to go out to the water.
Right.
And Brody's on the beach. And he basically wants to shut down the beach, but he acquiesces because the mayor is basically strong-arming him.
Right.
We're not going to kill this summer.
No.
We're not going to kill the business.
No. And so the public doesn't know yet.
Public doesn't know. They go out. This Kittner kid goes out with his raft.
Right. But this is
Pippet, the dog,
Tippet.
is out.
I learned it as Tippet from the subtitles.
It's not Pippet?
I always thought it was Pippin.
I thought it was Pippet.
Well, the subtitle said Tippet.
I don't trust that.
Yeah,
I'm going to go with Pippet. He said Pippet,
Yeah.
Pippet. He wasn't saying Tippet.
But the thing is, this is also Spielberg visual storytelling. So we have basically two things going on for this entire scene. We're seeing Brody and his point of view.
Yeah.
Out in the water. Brody, point of view. Brody. And the whole idea is throughout the entire thing, Brody's constantly being distracted. And first he's distracted by just the swimmers and he's like, wait, is that, it's a guy with a bathing cap. That's not a shark. And then he's distracted by a man who's like, I got people on my lot and I need you to deal with them. There's parking situations. And he's literally like glimpsing over, and we have the classic split diopter, which I've mentioned, this idea of we have split focus. So there's a deep focus for half the lens and the other half is this guy's face right in front of him. So you have this guy's face and him trying to see.
Which is him working magic with the camera.
Yeah. And then finally, the final distraction is his wife trying to loosen him up because he's all freaked out and she's giving him a back rub. And at the same time, as part of the distractions, we have what appears to be a single mom looking over her son who just wants one more swim. Come on, Mom.
Your hands are very pruned, Alex Kittner.
Just 10 more minutes.
And she acquiesces again.
And she acquiesces. And he goes out in his classic, and this is the 70s, because we didn't have boogie boards back then. We had these like inflatable rafts.
Yeah.
I remember using those, down in North Carolina.
And they had those lines of inflates.
Yeah,
right?
and you would like ride waves with them and everything. They were super, super popular.
Yeah. And he's on that, and he's paddling out.
Yeah, and then at the same time, Brody's kids and a whole bunch of other kids happen to follow him in. So we have these mass of children in the water at the same time,
right?
And families just watching their kids out in the water.
And then the camera shot from beneath the water, that underwater photography begins, and you see these kids.
Little feet
floating. One of the most horrific shots again. You see these little feet paddling, and the shark. You're assuming you're the point of view of the shark. Coming at them. It must be where Carpenter got the idea for Halloween. That point of view shot of this monster.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And then the cut to Brody's face again, and they do the Hitchcock where they do the vertigo shot, which is basically it's really, and Scorsese did this later on in Goodfellas. It's basically they dolly in and zoom out at the same time. So you appear to be the exact same fixed position and size, but your background changes because the lens length changes. And so it's this really wonderful piece of distortion. And so they use it to create this like realization.
Yeah.
Because what he's seeing, and it actually, this gives me chills to this moment. You see the fin flip in the air, you see his body flip in the air, and then you see this burst of blood in the air.
And it's a beautiful silhouette, and then the blood comes, and
Yeah.
it's just like, oh my God. It's so horrific. You're almost like, did they really just kill off that kid?
Yeah, 12-year-old boy.
Oh, and they killed him off, and you
And
know,
there's literally blood. Then there's chaos, there's panic, because Brody immediately is like, oh my, I just saw that.
Yeah.
I just saw that.
and the adults are running over the kids in the
What
water, and like it is absolute pandemonium.
Yeah.
And that shot is so amazing because you said it's that realization of like, what have I done?
Yes.
I didn't listen to myself.
Yes.
I listened to the mayor.
Yes.
And look where we are.
And this
Right?
is
It was
Brody's
a shock.
failure as a father.
Yeah.
In this moment. Because his kids were out there too.
Right.
Right? And so
He didn't do what was right.
he did not do what was right.
Like Castro said, that was the system eating itself.
It really was. And so this leads to, as I've already introduced, like Quint has introduced, because this leads to Mrs. Kittner creating a bounty for the shark. And there's the chaos of the community hunting the shark, and they think they get the shark, and it's the wrong shark. But this is where we also get to finally meet Hooper.
Yeah.
Right? So in the midst of the chaos of not only just the community, but interlopers from, what is it, New Jersey. I don't recognize all those plates,
Exactly.
boss.
Rhode Island,
Yeah, yeah.
right? As far as New Jersey.
It's like, I'll go get that shark, and there's this like, flotilla of all these little boats and chaos to try to go chase a shark.
sticks of dynamite. They're all chumming.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
like 5 feet or 5 inches from each other. It's just a mess.
But we get our third main character who shows up in the form of Hooper's the oceanographer.
All right. Entitled, wealthy,
Yep.
educated,
Yep.
and knows a ton about sharks.
But he's not ineffectual, which is interesting. Like normally
No.
that character would be someone who's like nerd, placed to the side, not really capable, who's just commenting
Yeah.
and saying, you're doing it wrong, you're doing it wrong. And he does do that a lot, but he's also quite skilled.
Yeah.
And he becomes important kind of contrast to the Quint character who's all macho, where obviously Roy Scheider sits in the middle,
And he brings some of the technology. He
Yeah.
brings some of the updated information. He's not just a old school fisherman who kind of knows what he knows and his hands tell the tale.
Right.
And so, yeah, there is. And it brings up a brilliant dynamic.
Yeah.
That it's gonna play out for the rest of the movie. But at that meeting with the community, there's this sense of we're gonna close the beaches. We've
Yeah.
decided we're not only going to put a bounty on the shark. Which
Only
they
24
do.
hours, Jim.
Exactly. I love that, where the mayor steps in only for 24 hours. And that's when leads to our essentially fourth kill.
It leads to the
Or
fourth
third
kill.
Is it
it's
fourth
third.
or third?
It's third because they catch a shark.
A tiger
And the
shark.
mayor's like-
a what? It's a tiger shark. A what?
And I love that was probably just a guy that they picked
it's
out.
so funny.
And they picked out all these people to play all these characters, and it's so wonderful. And but yeah, the idea is, so they catch a tiger shark, and they're like, we got him. But Dreyfus, Hooper, is like, well, that bite radius ain't right.
That's right.
And the mayor's like, bite radius. And he's like, we need to open the thing up. And the mayor's like, you're not performing some like half-ass autopsy. I don't want to see that Kittner kid flopping out on the deck.
Another great moment.
Right? Because he
it's just
talks about
great.
like its digestive system is very slow. So whatever's in there from the past 24 hours is in there. And this is really important because the mayor says, job well done, beaches are open, all good. And Dreyfus shows up, and this is kind of in that moment that, because what happens is the Kittner mom comes up to him, all right? And so in the midst of the shark hunt, the one that's caught, Kittner's mom shows up, and she's in her nice widow black, and she walks right up to Brody and slaps him hard. Just like takes him
and
out.
Everyone in the community is like, you hear the collective,
Yeah.
air in the room
Yeah.
leaving.
And she's like, you knew, my son is dead because of you. And it's brutal. It's like brutal. It's like he's a father, right? And so that leads to the moment where I think for in the beginning, we have Hooper is a commiserator, an important one to keep Brody sane, I think, because he comes to his house and he comes with wine and he takes the wine and he opens it. And he's like, you got to let that break. And he's like, he's pouring himself like, this is like, I need to do shots here. It's like, it's like, can we turn this into a Long Island iced tea, please? Like, we got to doctor this drink. And, and his wife is being really, conversant with Hooper, which is funny because in the book, they have an affair, which is so bizarre.
Hooper and the wife?
Yeah.
How bizarre, yeah. I'm glad they got rid of that. I don't know if that would have worked.
No. And especially with the adventure story, you'd be like, how the hell are these two guys hanging out with one another?
Yeah.
Never mind chasing a shark. And so they do the autopsy, and they know the Kittner boy's not in there, but the mayor proceeds, which leads to...
Well, actually, they find Ben Gardner. So that's technically...
Oh, I forgot.
That's technically kill 3, but we never see it.
And we don't
just
even
see the
know
after
if...
effects. We got to assume it's him because of the tooth.
But that one's not as fun.
No, it's not. So, But technically, people are going to say, well, actually, there was a third kill before this. Yeah. But for the fourth kill, they're all out on the beach.
Right.
Great scene.
Yeah.
Right? And, the mayor goes to one of his friends. He's like... why aren't you in the water?
Yeah.
And the guy's like, well...
It's like I just put my sunblock on, just hanging out here. And his wife is petrified.
Everybody is.
But
they start it.
And the mayor literally coerces what you could imagine is like a good friend to pick up his wife by hand and just walk right out with their 3 kids into the ocean.
And it's interesting, too, because you talked about it with Brody. It's like Brody is kind of... the paternal figure, as the mayor should be, or anyone in that role of power, for the whole community. And so really Brody is somewhat responsible for Kittner's death.
Oh, he absolutely is.
And I think it does work about that idea of, the relationship there. But at this point now they have patrols, they have watching systems, like they have everything in place to make this place safe. Yeah. And then you imagine, okay, you know what I mean? Like they've at least done the work. They do this in Australia all the time, they have systems.
And this is and we're forgetting this is America's Day. It's 4th of July.
Yeah.
Right? And so he's like, we need 4th of July. And so they finally get them into the beach and they get them into the water. And as soon as like this friend's kids go in, then all the other kids go in. But at the same time, there's this chaos. There's a helicopter going back and forth. There's a flotilla of boats. You can even see in the distance, there's even a buoy line so you don't go past it. And sure enough, they're out there and someone sees a shark.
Yeah.
And so there's chaos and everybody floods out and they run back out of the water and it's awful. And this is Spielberg at his best too.
Oh, that's the chaos scene. You're right.
And it turns out to be a canard. It's just 2 kids with a piece of cardboard and a fin. And they almost thankfully don't get shot.
I thought that's right. Exactly.
Yeah. And so, but you're seeing like in that chaos, like older men and women just getting trampled on the edge of the beach. And it's in this chaos we finally see the shark because a woman on the opposite side of the so it's like imagine a beach where there's kind of a water jetty that goes into a bay, all right? And there's this woman that's on the opposite side of the jetty from where the main beach is, where the chaos has just ensued. And she's going, shark! It's in the pond. And I would call it bay is more like
but they call it a pond,
harbor,
right?
And she sees the shark. And we see for the first time the actual fins of the shark, full length, and you see its scale.
Go in.
And meanwhile, we haven't mentioned this, but Brody has said to his son, who's got his brand new sailboat, who, they had implored, get out of the sailboat, just a day before. That's right. Michael, you listen to your father.
When they see the pictures, which are so well done, those pictures, those old school pictures of the bites and the shark going through the boat and all that. It's so well done.
It's so Moby Dick. And so he's implored his son with his friends to go into the pond, even though Michael's like, pond's for old ladies, Dad. And it's like he wants to go.
Do it for your old man.
Yeah, let's do it for your old man. And so meanwhile, he realizes Brody in this moment that is his older son, who's like 12 himself, 14.
That's right.
You know, he's pretty young still, is out in the pond where the shark is. And he's like realizing this and he's moving slowly, and then he just goes on a full sprint. And now we have kill number 3.
Yeah. And then we get to kill number 3. They're in the sailboat, and there's someone who's instructing them, who's saying like, hey, you kids, you need to do this or tie it off. You're not doing it. And he seems like some sort of old school sail instructor. And as he's saying that, you see the shark fin emerge and knock him off his boat.
Yeah. And it's a little dinghy.
Dinghy. And then you see a leg falling down that's been bitten off, or am I wrong?
No. This is the first time we see the shark's teeth, too. Because this is the first time we get one of the Bruces kind of breach and grab him. So we see him actually grabbed and pulled under. And then we cut to the leg.
To the leg coming down.
Yeah, which is like so gnarly.
It is gnarly. It is. Like, that was like, this was PG.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you were sending kids to this?
Yeah.
I mean, insane. Just even with the hand in the beginning, too, with the crabs, with Chrissy's hands when they find her. But anyway, then the shark coming for the son, like after that kill, comes around, turns around. Brody's son is in shock.
Yeah.
Sees the shark coming to him, but the shark doesn't hit Brody's son.
And
just goes right by.
There's an outtake that I'd never seen where it's so, and this is part of like how we got PG. It's like there's a scene where the kid gets wrapped up with like that approach that we see the point of view of the shark's kind of point of view going at Michael. Yeah. Right? Just treading water. He must have been, because in the outside, he must have been, it has basically the sailing instructor in his mouth.
Oh, wow.
And Michael gets caught on him, right? And there's this outtake of the two of them being pulled along together. The swim instructor, the sailing instructor's in the mouth of the shark, and Michael's kind of on top, and the sailing instructor pushes Michael away as a last.
Oh my God, like a last gesture.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That would have been kind of interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Is that an outtake you've seen?
Yeah. It's in one of the documentaries. Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
And I was like, oh my God.
It was gnarly.
Oh, yeah.
I love it. But it does get to the idea of the shark, excuse me, as more than just now a monster. The shark is some expression of fatherhood, of masculinity, of something, because it doesn't kill the son.
Right.
And it's haunting Brody in some real ways. And so it's like, why does he spare the son? Doesn't spare anything else.
No.
He'll eat anything in his mouth.
Well, it's because he's got an instructor in his mouth.
Well, yeah, I guess that would be the theory, but they get rid of that, right? And it's an interesting edit.
Yeah.
Because it does make it personal, right? This whole idea about this being territorial, the whole idea about why the hell would the shark ultimately follow them out to sea, right? Like, there is this sense that the shark isn't just, now feeding mindlessly.
No.
Like, this is like, they are being hunted.
Yeah. This is like, was it Arachnophobia? You remember that? Did you ever watch that film?
Yes. That was John Goodman, one of his earliest films.
And one of my favorite things, the contrivances, is they anthropomorphize the spider itself as to being intelligent and making choices.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's what you're alluding to here. It's like we get it. Spielberg is giving the shark, some anthropomorphic motivations here.
Yeah. The shark is more now than just a shark, right? The shark is some expression of dealing with these characters, phobias, fears, this metaphor, whatever. It moves now. And this is the moment it changes.
Yeah. And so, this is one of our, Michael's take, because he's in shock.
Yeah.
They get Michael out of the water, and they do this is a Spielberg thing. We don't know whose leg was lost. And so for a brief moment, it's like Spielberg lets the audience know, it's like, no, it's not Michael's leg, because as he's pulled out of the water and he's in shock. And so they go to the hospital. And again, Brody being the dad, there's this scene. He's got Sean, who was like terrified because he's crying as everybody's chasing. Because he's Sean, the little brother, is always hanging around Michael. Classic, like little brother, like really interested in his big brother's stuff.
Michael's in the pond. He's playing with the sand.
Yeah, the Muffin Man, the Muffin Man.
Yeah, that kid's awesome. I would be about that kid's age when this was being made.
Pretty much. And so he's got Sean, and he's doing such a dad thing. He's got his hand up his little boy's shirt trying to comfort him, right? And the mom is, I love the little moment where Ellen is trying to comfort Michael, who's coming out of whatever, not the ER, because he's just in shock and it's minor shock, and they're saying he's okay. He's like, can I get you anything? He's like, yeah, my cars. He's a 14-year-old or 12-year-old and he wants his cars.
Yeah.
And he's like, how about some ice cream? He's like, yeah, coffee.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And it's the classic, no matter how old your kids are, they always sometimes revert.
Yeah. And there is a moment there, really, when he becomes a kid again. And that's really the humanizing element of this. I
need my mom.
And there's the other moment now when he's dealing, the mayor comes in.
Yeah.
And so he basically says, take Sean home. And the wife says, which home? New York?
Yeah.
Or here? And he's like, no, here. And there's a shift in Brody. He's going to finally step up and take some responsibility for the havoc that's been wreaked as a result of his inaction.
Yeah.
And that's a kind of changing point. And then we have the whole second half of the film.
Yeah. And Brody's like, you're now the mayor of Shark City. There is no summer. It's over. Get over it. There's no August. Never mind. You're the one who you're the face of allowing your public to be eaten.
Yeah, it's the greatest. And we didn't even talk about it, but that whole scene in front of the billboard when Mayor Vaughn is arguing for it, and they're arguing at the proportions of the shark, right?
Yeah, You'd to get your name, your face on the National Geographic, wouldn't you?
Exactly.
That's classic obstructionist bureaucrat stuff. That's what I love.
Yeah, and he did that beautifully. I think the character, the actor who played Mayor Vaughn was amazing.
Murray Hamilton.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
And so then we have this weird scene as we move to the second half where Brody is getting on the boat with Quint as they're planning to go out to sea. And there's this strange scene between Brody and his wife, because his wife is there seeing him off, and obviously Brody's distracted. But then you have Quint singing all these, lurid songs lewd songs about, having sex with women.
In Spain.
Yeah, and then the whole idea of...
my fair lady.
Kept her virginity for 15 years. Not bad in this vicinity, right? This whole idea of the sexualizing of her. And she's kind of really almost scared of the whole situation.
Yeah, she's scared of what her husband's going to become around these men. And that's that's really... Yeah, that's so great because that makes sense because she's like, oh no, is he going to go back? Yeah. That's what we might infer from that scene now is she's seen this. He was a New York City cop. We like the cliche of the grizzled cop who can't be it with his family, and Brody chose to not be that. And is he going to become that again? You might infer that's what she's kind of really worried about.
And there's this yin and yang of, Quint and Hooper. Right. And there are two kind of pieces, obviously probably better towards the Hooper way, which is interesting in terms of the affair for Ellen. Yeah. But the pieces, these are the two extremes, right, where he could go and what he's going into.
Yeah.
And I like your reading about his kind of trying to toe that line to become maybe the changing nature of what a man of the 70s needs to start thinking about as the, world changes and things change around them, and that return, and move away from that gristled kind of, man at the bar telling the stories to his friends while everybody in the rest of his life is being lost to him. I mean, it touches me on a personal level, right? In terms of just experience and what that means. And I also think it deals with some of the kind of fears and change and phobia around. We talked about Roe versus Wade. We talked about the women's liberation of the early 70s, right? There was the kind of battle of the sexes where you had one of those first tennis matches, the Battle of the Sexes tennis match of 73, where bizarre. Billie Jean King defeated Bobby Riggs. And there was this sense of, why couldn't a woman defeat a man? Why couldn't we be in a different era? And I think some of that tension is what people argue, critics argue, which I think is fun, again, at the basis of Jaws. That, Brody might have to be changing, and changing as a father, changing as a man to deal with the changing nature of the country and the culture. I love that. Like that to me, that stuff is great because it's just a squalus movie. It's just about a shark. No, it's about sexuality. It's about masculinity. It's about the new woman.
And I think, but it's still, they can't help but go into the adventure story because that's what we all want and need as an audience. And it's important because the Quint character still matters because he's a guy who actually knows how to kill a shark.
But it also plays out in that second half very much.
Exactly.
Where they're all
That's what I mean.
performing their masculinity. Yeah. They're all doing what it is they know or think they should do.
Right.
But at the end of the day, you know, where that matters, who dies,
right,
who survives,
right,
and what that means for the kind of second part of, you know, Jaws 2, Jaws 3, Jaws 4, or just culturally, it seems important, right?
Yeah, because, I mean, there is that idea of, if we want to play into that idea of like brotherhoods built in you know, through trauma, right? You know, classic like war films do this all the time, and they do it quite well. It's like they become your family. These people you survive with, and you know all this tension we are introduced to, and really dominates the first half of the shark hunt between between Hooper and Quint. You know, Quint says, I know how to do this. Do what I say. Stop sticking your fancy gear and ideas in my face. You know, and then Dreyfuss is like, I know what I'm doing. I was, what does he say early before they take off? Is like, I was a crewman on America's Cup. And he's like, we're talking about work here, sharking, not your fancy day, whatever it was.
He makes him tie the knots.
Yeah,
and he hasn't done basic seamanship. You know, it's so good.
It's like, give me your hand. It's like you've got wealthy hands. You know, it's like you've been counting your money too much.
Yeah, he's like, I'm not here for this working class hero shit, which is another great line.
Yeah,
and I think it goes to your point of like, Jaws marks a shift from the era of Hollywood, like. The French Connection of these working class heroes, right? The anti-hero. These this is about telling a story and making some money and creating the blockbuster. And like you said, you know, from this point, you have Spielberg and Lucas, who essentially take all of that amazing work, I think, that happened in the 70s with The Godfather, Godfather 2, you know, Paper Moon, you know, all the Last Picture Show. And the whole script is rewritten.
Yeah.
This is now about blockbuster Hollywood.
Yeah.
And I think in some ways you could read those three guys on that ship as a kind of, you know, allegory for what's happening to Hollywood.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
Yeah, because Quentin is old Hollywood.
Yeah.
And
he's that anti-hero of
Brody,
the 60s.
And Brody and Hooper are kind of this amalgam. Of the new, you know, we have
they're Lucas and Spielberg.
Yeah, they're one's the techno nerd. Well, Lucas and Spielberg are both like techno nerds, but I think even though people, it's so funny, like they try to.
That was another hot take. Can I say that? Hot take.
Yeah, yeah.
Hot take number 2.
It's
you don't like
mild take because I think a lot of people have seen. They see
said that.
They see, you know, the Hooper character. They see Spielberg in the Hooper character, but the funny thing is, I actually see like. The notion that Spielberg early on is pegged as this technical director, special effects director, I think that's bullshit. I think, like, yes, he loves special effects. He was a technical person, but he was first and foremost a visual storyteller and an incredible one. Yeah. Like, the entire first half of the movie says all that. He was obsessed, like, all these these are the directors that studied film, that made films.
Absolutely.
Right? And so their obsession with shots by Hitchcock, and the Vertigo shot, which I've already talked about, and split diopters, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. But they love filmmaking so much, and he's just an incredible storyteller. And he wants to do it honestly, like we're saying the new Hollywood wanted to. Let's get out of the studio system. Let's make this in these natural environments. But let's also remember that the films of the 40s and 50s, and what we loved about them is they were entertaining.
Yeah.
They attracted huge audiences. The epicness of Gone with the Wind or The Wizard of Oz. Let's bring a little bit of that back.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think that's what George Lucas and Spielberg understood so keenly. But to say that they were and so to me, Spielberg is more of the Brody. He's just like, I'm a normal guy who has normal tastes. You know, I want to see families that care about one another. I want to see guys that stay engaged with the situation because they believe in helping.
Because he's refusing the anti-hero.
Yeah.
Which further reinforces our new reading that
Right.
Brody now is Spielberg.
Right.
Lucas is the technical.
Right. Right. So that's what I'm trying. I'm just substituting. That's all I'm doing.
That's
It's
brilliant.
like, because I think that Lucas is absolutely the Spielberg. He was the super technical person who barely understood people.
Yeah, exactly. And was like, you want to direct Empire? That's great. Let me just get back to making crazy, amazing visuals and sound stuff.
Yeah.
Which is great. But no, I like that. But what also... your take overall with the Jaws, and because we're at the end, we have that scene, which is probably worth talking about with them all telling their war stories.
Oh, yeah.
And then, what's your take of it as not only a family film, but as a horror film? I'd be interested on that.
So, again, my connection to horror is weak. I have weak links. But to me, the most horrifying horror movie is when Quint's killed. Right?
Yeah.
So, we've seen a leg fall off, but we haven't seen it actually bitten off. We've seen a man dragged down into the water. We've seen a rotten head in the water, but we have not seen someone actually chomped the way that Quint is chomped as the shark finally breaches the boat itself, and Quint can't escape. He's literally like sliding into. It's like the Titanic. It's like you're doomed. You're going in.
Yeah.
And that was still to me the most horrifying because the blood, like especially when he finally bleeds out his mouth.
Yeah.
That's the horror side to me of it all.
Yeah, and I wonder if the horror side of it too is just the unseeable, right?
Yeah.
What you can't see, this underneath, right? The fact that there is something coming from beneath and you can't fully identify it. And once you do identify it, maybe it's a little bit less horrific, I don't know. But that whole sense, right, of the unseen.
Yeah. But I don't, to me, that's just good filmmaking rather than horror, right?
Yeah.
Like that's to me, like when I think of horror, like, oh, the children of Leatherface, Friday the 13th, The Man in the Ice, they do this point of view stuff like the shark,
Yeah.
but they never hide the character, right? That to me, that's why I say that's just horror is like the hacking and destroying of humans and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and so the hiding is not horror to me. I think it's scary, and I can't even imagine what my 8-year-old self was like trying to watch this movie and being like, oh my freaking God, I'm never going in a bathtub again.
I mean, there is that, right?
Yeah.
Just completely unsettling.
Yeah.
And for me, I always remember those point of view sights of the shark from beneath. And then when I'm in the water, I'm thinking like, that's probably what someone or something is seeing of me.
There's something down there.
There's something down there. Exactly. I love that.
Yeah. All right. So, I mean, I think we've done it. We've done 2 of these. We have more to come. We'll keep them. This is the Jim Groom special of hot summer 70s family horror.
We have 2. We're going to keep in the 70s. No, we're not leaving the 70s.
And these are all 3 films I have not watched.
Yeah. Now we're moving to the second half of the 70s.
Yeah.
These 2 were the first half.
Okay.
But now we're moving. A quick fun fact about Jaws. Do you know that the shark?
So
the
wait,
Jaws
we're
shark.
just one fun fact? I thought we did a lot of facts.
No,
too.
a quick other fun fact. Sorry. Jaws went into the public domain, the actual shark. And I was thinking.
Wait, what does that mean?
That the actual shark, like you can now use that image of the shark in the public domain. I guess
The
something-
poster image?
The poster image or even the image of the shark. There's something that it went. I have to maybe be more clear about this. But it gave me an idea. Let me get to my idea. You remember in the 70s they had that Jaws board game or game?
Oh, I never played it.
So basically they had a Jaws game where it was a big plastic
Oh, that
Jaws,
seems familiar.
and you would put things in
And it would snap. Yeah, it was on a timer.
Exactly. So I am thinking that if that's the case, you could probably 3D print out and resell that game, which I would love
that'd be
to
funny.
do.
Well,
I would love to create that Jaws game again.
Yeah.
If the image of the Jaws,
Well, the game is a separate copyright, Jim, but that's okay.
you're ruining my
I know.
my vision.
I know. But we could still print it, and then we can make a new game.
No, I need the original game because I don't have any original ideas as I have seen on the codes.
Yeah, that's why we have to talk about stuff that we love rather than stuff that we create, right?
Understood. Anyway, I thought I was going somewhere with this.
Oh no, I think we should still 3D. We got a 3D printer. We're on my campus.
That's
right. We got tools.
We have the technology.
I don't think you're going to see us here again anytime soon. But maybe
you're like Hooper. I'm like Brody, or is it the other way around? Are you Brody and I'm Hooper?
Yeah. I guess I'm more.
Or am
Hooper.
I Quinn?
You're Quinn.
I'm kind of more
I'm
Quinn.
the amalgam of the other two. I'm the one who slaps you around and says, "Stop acting like an asshole.
Stop playing with yourself, Hooper."
All right. Well, thanks everybody.
Bye bye.